It's 8:46, and time for another episode, another edition here of Survive and Thrive with CH Insurance and our pal Joe Convertino Jr. Joe, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Gomez and Lisa. How are you?
Good.
Another beautiful day in central New York.
Spectacular. You know what? And we've earned it, if anything. You know, the last several months have been stressful, to say the least. So it is nice to finally have some good weather to get out and whatever, go for a walk, go to an outdoor restaurant, and try to enjoy life best we can until things get a little bit back to normal.
You got it.
Well, let's meet our guest this week, Joe. Why don't you introduce him?
Yes, we've been talking to all types of businesses the last 8-10 weeks. You know, we thought it was time. We have Dr. Joe Barry, who's the leader of preventative medicine up in Camillus. Doc Barry, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure. Hello to everybody.
Hello, Doctor. Thank you for joining us here.
So Doc, we've been talking, I mean, obviously you're a business, but you take care of, obviously, patients. But, you know, we want to learn a little bit during this pandemic. Man, you hear about, you've been closed for 2.5 months. You know, how did it work? And did you ever think something like this could happen in your career where you're seeing patients but can't see them? What kind of changes happened during this for you and your staff?
Well, I'm a big fan of history and science fiction, so I expect a pandemic every week. Historians tell us that there's typically a pandemic every 30 years. The last big one was 1918, so we've been overdue for a couple of cycles. This is kind of a pandemic with training wheels. When you have a mortality of less than 1%, you know, it's not like every other person's dying, which would be, of course, a tragedy at a different level. But we never closed our doors. We felt as primary care, we had to stay open. We had to be available for people because cancer doesn't stop. Hypertension doesn't go away. Depression doesn't get better. So luckily, listen, if I was a good businessman, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'd be retired in Sanibel Island. But luckily, I was smart enough to hire people. And, you know, my office manager, Kelly Shackleton, she just took it on like Jim Kelly and calling audibles.
Okay, in what ways give us some examples of what
Sure.
you wanted to make?
Well, we immediately people didn't want to come to the doctor, and you don't blame them. I mean, outside the hospitals, they look at doctors' offices as a place where sick people congregate, and they don't want to go and get infected. So our business fell off, 80% for the first month. But we did the televisits. Televisits are a pale imitation of a real visit. There's something about actually being in the room and looking a person in the eye and listening to their story and being able to examine it with a televisit. But televisits allow them to get refills and allow us to actually, do some billings and keep our office open and, financially running. So we did a lot of televisits initially, and over time, I'd say that now we're back to about 80% volume, and 80% of that is actual people coming in. We were lucky because during this time, we had planned an expansion to a whole new floor of our building, and that floor had just been renovated. So anyone who's sick, anyone who thinks they had the COVID, anyone who wants to get tested goes to a completely separate part of the building where they have separate staff, everyone's gowned up, et cetera, et cetera. So for us, we felt we couldn't close. I know a lot of doctors had to close, the dentist did, but it just wasn't an option for us. I got to see people. I got to do my thing.
Hey, you're listening here to Survive and Thrive with CH Insurance with Joe Convertino Jr. and Dr. Joe Barry. I'll tell you what, we'll get to our break here and continue our conversation that everybody will get a chance to watch and listen to on our Facebook page a little bit later on this morning. And there we are, like trained professionals.
Okay.
There we go. So we'll continue the interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dr. Barry, when people were coming to you and calling you thinking that they had COVID, how many of them tested positive for COVID versus just they were just overreacting to a situation or just sort of fear calling? Doc, I think I have the COVID.
Well, it's a case of I thought I had it in February-itis. Everyone thinks they had something in February that was the COVID. We've tested, at this point, about 900 people, and we've had 4 positives.
Wow.
And we haven't seen this. And all those positives were the antibody positive, not the antigen. So the 4 people we tested had recovered already completely. We only had one. we only had one patient we tested with the antigen test, and we test both, that tested positive. But we knew that person, that person came in and said, I was positive in the hospital. And we said, hey, let's test you now and make sure our equipment works right. And he did test positive.
Now, I had just my annual physical about a month ago, doctor, and I asked my family doctor, my GP, the same types of questions about, from his perspective, what did he think about what's going on? And he said, well, the big unknown is really the number of people who have it, which obviously it's growing, as it turns out. The people who had it and didn't know they have it or asymptomatic. And his view was that in a year or two, looking back, when all the numbers are really out there, he felt anyway that it'll look back, it won't look as bad as people think it looks now. Does that make sense?
Well, I think that the mathematical models were so far off, it's hard to believe any prediction now. It's kind of like, we live in central New York. There's going to be 3 feet of snow. It's going to be snowmageddon, and we get 3 inches. It's like living in Florida. It's a Cat 5 hurricane, and it turns out to be a tropical storm. I guess I've been inured to all those things. So unless people were dropping dead at my doorstep, I didn't believe any predictions. This is a virus in the same family as all the other coronaviruses. It's a seasonal virus like all the others. Now, maybe it's been engineered, et cetera, but I think that it's certainly worse than the flu, but it's not the thing that's going to end the world.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on everybody, you get caught up in the media and everybody, a second wave, Doc? I mean, do you, I know we're social distancing and doing things we need to do. Do you think there'll be a second wave, like they're saying, late summer, fall?
Personally, I don't, but I don't think anybody knows. Don't get me going, because I think the masks are a sham. The studies that I said the masks don't work. Sick people should use the masks. That doesn't work against viruses anyways. My experts, the Nobel Prize winning economist from Stanford, has said the lockdown is unaffected in any state, region, or country he's ever evaluated, including all the European countries. But here we are.
Hey, doctor, how about the people who, again, paying attention to all this, and as you mentioned early on, scared to go to the doctor, but really people maybe who have delayed treatment or delayed getting something looked at, that as the weeks and months go by, when they finally do come in to see you and other doctors, turns out they've done more harm than good by staying away. Have you seen that?
Well, the biggest fear is missing cancer, and to go from a stage 1 cancer that could be cured with surgery to a cancer that can't be cured but can only hopefully be treated, or, the demise delayed. That to me is the biggest thing. And we're not seeing a ton of that because this wasn't a year-long thing. A couple months delay in most diagnoses don't make a huge difference. But there certainly is more depression, more alcohol use. People are smoking like chimneys. It's being home could be a thing where people actually get stronger. I have people losing weight. I have people getting in better shape. But for every one of those people, I've got a dozen that are getting fatter and slower and sicker.
That's true. Well, we talked to, I think it was 2 weeks ago, a trainer. We talked to Randy from Metro, and he had a great line. He said, people are going to come out of the pandemic either a chunk, a drunk, or a hunk.
So, I like that line.
That would be a good one for Doc. But through this process, I know with us being in the insurance business, Doc, I mean, they've been, the carriers are talking telemedicine more and more. I mean, do you see this feature picking up? I know you had it before, but, and I know the personal touch, but with the way kids are today, everything quicker. I mean, do you see telemedicine staying with us for the near future?
Yes, I absolutely do. I think it's here with us for the long distance future. I pity the people like the gynecologists. Hard to do telemedicine and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Good point. Solid point.
But I do think, of course, it depends, like everything else, on the money. If there's good money in it, we'll do more of it. If the money isn't as good as an in-office call, we're going to try and convince people to come to the office.
Right. So, Doc, tell us a little bit about you, your practice. I know you've been in business, or you've been a doc 33 years. Great family man, great staff. But tell us a little bit about preventative medicine. I know you have your practice. You have I think my dad's in an upscale practice with service. Tell us a little bit about your model.
Well, I came back to join my father in primary care 33 years ago, and Dr. Knudsen, my partner, joined us. And we do a preventive medicine primary care, high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, thyroid trouble, and all the combination therein. But 5 years ago, I said, I feel that I'm at the top of my game. I'm frustrated. This is not the way I want to finish my career. So I could have gone into work in the hospital or the nursing home or done hospice work. But I said, you know, so I heard about this concierge medicine where you could spend more time with people and try and actually change them. So I changed my model from managing illness to trying restoring wellness. And that's completely, totally changed my approach to people. So when I do a physical exam, you mentioned, Gomez, you had your recent physical, I offer people tests that every other doctor in Syracuse can offer them, but either hasn't had the training or interest in. For instance, we all know the #1 cause of death in this country is heart disease. And I did hundreds and hundreds of stress tests on people. And if the stress test was abnormal, they went off and had a bypass or put some stents in. But everybody knows, and I pull up the example of Tim Russert, of people that have had stress tests and then dropped dead a month later. There are better tests out there now. So once I opened my eyes to better testing, doing the insulin resistance, measuring the omega-3 and omega-6 ratio, I couldn't go back. And so, yes, I still prescribe medications, but I really focus on what I think is the primary determinant of people's health, which is their diet. Now, my sister says, how can you preach about diet each and every week? Don't you get tired? I mean, everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows what to eat. And my answer is no, by providing people with actual numbers they can follow. When you tell someone lose a few pounds, that doesn't mean anything. When you tell people lose a few pounds and here's how, your blood work isn't good, here's the marker, and here's how to improve it. You have too much carbohydrates in your diet. That's not me saying it. And you don't even have to believe your waist about that question. Look at the blood work that can be done. Every doctor is focusing on cholesterol. Cholesterol is not the problem. The real metric of your metabolic health are things like insulin resistance, your triglyceride to HDL ratio, your omega-3 and omega-6. And every doctor in Central New York and every doctor in America knows these numbers and tests, but they weren't trained that way. Our training has been, what's the problem? Here's a pill, here's a procedure. You have blood pressure, here's a pill, here's a procedure. You got the sugar, here's a pill, here's a procedure. No, if you got the sugar, you slap on a blood sugar monitor and you look when you eat something, what does the monitor say? I guess I should have known that eating that food would wake it up. So I think you have to empower people with actual data to help drive their change. But not everyone changes. I still have people that are getting heavier, still smoking. And so I continue, maybe it's hypnosis, maybe it's acupuncture, maybe it's neurolinguistic programming. But I think the modern doctor has to get past here's a pill, and the 15-minute visits every 3 or 6 months. Nobody changes that way. You have to knuckle down on people and say, I'm watching you. I am here. And if your weight goes up, we're going to do something different. And you can't do that in a 15-minute visit. I don't think you can.
So that was the thought of creating concierge.
Dr. Berry, if I want to be, so I turned 50 this year. And it's, yeah, right. So I said to Gomez this morning, I said, oh, like getting old stinks. And I'm pretty healthy. And, my weight is still good. I can still wear the clothes I always wore. But, when you start to get, start to hit 50, especially as a woman, I want to be thinner, stronger, maintain my health as long as possible. I feel like you're speaking my language with this, prevention and being healthier. Help me.
Well, you can feel pretty healthy, but actually be at the end of your reserves metabolically. All my doctor friends have focused on an organ, the brain, the vagina, the heart, the kidneys. But medicine is about what's happening at the cellular level, what's happening with the mitochondria, the Golgi apparatus, the endoplasmic reticulum, the cell membranes. Those are all made of chemicals that we can measure and understand. And it just blew my mind when I started doing this. I learned about this in medical school and biology in college. I never thought I'd be actually having the opportunity to look at cell membranes and say, that's a healthy membrane and that's not a healthy membrane. It's like if doctors made pizza, we put the pizza in the oven and it doesn't come out right. Okay, let's cook it a little longer. Let's spin it around on a platform. We call the surgeons. They start drilling holes into the oven. But when you take it out and look at it, you go, here's what's wrong. We used the wrong mozzarella. We had the wrong crust. So I tell people, you've got to look at your recipe of the stuff going in. If you don't, if you put horrible gas in your car, you're not going to get good function. You're nothing more than a big bag of metabolic and electrical activity. And if you don't respect those chemical reactions in your body, you're never going to have good health. You can feel good and be insulin resistant. You can feel good and have a terrible triglyceride to HDL ratio. But it's easy to measure those things, and that's what I am trying to work with other doctors to do. Wake up. It's the 21st century. You have these metabolic markers. Empower people to at least know where they are. Not everyone wants to change, but if you want to change, you don't know where you are, you don't know how to get better.
Remember at the gym that I used to go to, this is maybe 20 years ago, one of the guys who had gone for his physical, and it was one of those kind of physicals where the numbers, blood pressure, sugar, everything was high, and the doctor at the time prescribed him a pair of running shoes. And I think he told him, he said, go get these, and you're going to come back here in a few months, and if these numbers aren't any different, then that prescription is going to have medicine on it instead of, and it scared him enough where he went to Dick's, got a pair of running shoes, and it scared him straight. And in 6 months, he lost about 50 pounds, and those numbers came back to within a manageable range. And he always thanked that doctor for doing it. And that was maybe 20 years ago.
Well, that doctor found a way to motivate people. And we as doctors get 0.0 training in motivation, interpersonal interviewing, psychology. We just get nothing. So I applaud that doctor. What I tell people now is, and you've heard this one, I'm sure, you got to social distance from the refrigerator. We do have a pandemic in this country, and the pandemic isn't the coronavirus. We have a pandemic of obesity, of diabetes, of cancer, of heart disease. Let's put the, no offense to these companies, but let's put McDonald's and Burger King and Chipotle on lockdown for a few months and see what happens, because the deaths from heart disease and cancer the deaths from coronavirus pale in comparison to these deaths. And I hate to mention it, but that's the kind of guy I am. The Johns Hopkins University said that doctors kill 200,000 people a year. So corona's got nothing on us. And I think that's because we have learned pill, pill, pill. What's the problem? Here's a pill. I was sure you were going to tell me all these numbers were off and the doctors just said, take a pill, come back in 3 months, I'll give you more medicine. Because we're focusing on the number on the page. You've got to focus on the patient in front of you, which is another reason why Bamon, when you went to your Dr. Gomez for his annual visit, did he sit with his back to you typing the whole time, or did he actually make contact with you?
No, that's what I like about him, and I've gone to him. He's a little bit younger than I am, but face to face, and I like him a lot for that reason. And even in the past, when I'd go, and he would similar kind of things. He'd say, if something was a little bit high, not anything that would require medicine, but just he'd let me know. So that's getting up a little. Keep an eye on the cholesterol. Keep an eye on the blood pressure or whatever. But he wouldn't automatically then fill out a prescription. Oh, that's a little high. Go get a prescription for something. He's the type of guy that would be almost a last resort instead of a first step. So I've always appreciated that.
We need more doctors like that.
Yeah.
But I find so many encounters today are with the provider staring over the typewriter and looking at the patient like this. And I tell them, get a scribe, hire a person to do that. You didn't go to medical school to be a typist and to input data on the computer. Hire someone. You'll have a much better job satisfaction. Patients
Gomez, we saw the correlation, when we did the Metro 42, I lost 20 pounds, you lost 20, numbers all came down. And
absolutely.
There is a correlation. So, well, Doc, thank you. We could talk all day with you. You're the best. Your staff, tell Kelly hello. And appreciate everything you brought us up to light on today.
Listen, I'm telling you now, I'm telling everybody, more vitamin D. The studies show the higher your vitamin D, the less likely you are to die from the COVID, the less likely you are to get infected. It's all about vitamin D. Don't listen if your doctor says your vitamin D is normal, because that's 30 to 100. You want to have your vitamin
down, vitamin D.
Vitamin
want your
D.
level
Yeah.
to be 60. So
What
however
about
much you have
zinc?
to take.
What about zinc?
Zinc's important, but nowhere near as important as vitamin D and vitamin C. They're easy to get supplements. You don't have to have someone's fancy name on them. Vitamin D, vitamin C, magnesium. That's one of the recipes for good health for anybody at any age.
All right, Doc, one more point is these guys know my father. Joey, you need to take a baby aspirin every day. This baby aspirin concept that people are doing, what's that myth?
Well, baby aspirin is useful if you're between the ages of 40 and 60 and you have a 10% risk of having an event in the next 10 years, which is practically nobody. If you're under 40, it's silly. If you're over 60, the risks are worse than the benefits. I tell people, if you believe in aspirin, and I'm not much into any medicine, certainly I don't recommend Tylenol or Motrin or any of those pills on a regular basis. I think they're very bad for your microbiome. But if you want to take an aspirin, take one every Sunday.
All right.
Gomez, you heard it from here, Gomez. Love
Are you
it.
taking it on Sunday to counteract the hangover from Saturday night, Joe Convertino?
Come on, ladies.
Hey, Dr. Barry, thank you again from Preventative Medicine Associates in Camillus. Great stuff. And again, we could go on all day, but we got to call it quits here today for Survive and Thrive with CH Insurance. Thanks a ton again, Joe. It's a pleasure to meet you, Doctor.
Great. Thanks, Doc Barry. Have a great week.
My pleasure. Spread the love, not the virus.
There you go. Good words. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks, Dr. Barry.